Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, my friends, nerds, and geeks out there. Today we are back in the lab. We are doing one of our first video episodes. We're going to throw this on YouTube. I think it will be a little easier. So if you don't know who I am, my name is Zigziga. I put all my content on zigbits.tech, and today we're going to rebuild an ISE node that failed over the last couple months. So we're back in the lab, and we're going to level set on what we have here. And I actually, on zigbits.tech, I have gone through 16 different blog posts out of about 35 blog posts that I plan to go through in an ISE blog series. It's very time intensive to do the way I was doing it, with all the screenshots and all the words and writing it all down in a blog post format, which I might still do. I might continue to do that, but thought some video content would be a lot be more preferred to see how to configure these items. So it just so happened that one of the ISE nodes in my 4-node cluster failed over the last couple weeks, maybe last couple months. So we're going to go ahead and rebuild it using the same version that we had, and then we will go through this process of upgrading it at some point as well. So right now, this is we're going to build an ISE node in ISE 2.3. because that's what our cluster is currently at, so ISE version 2.3, and then eventually we will upgrade the entire cluster to the latest version of ISE that is out there. So for you that are not familiar with ISE, it's Cisco Identity Services Engine. This is the Cisco's ISE. It's the network access control, but it's so much more than network access control. And if you follow along, you will see that it's all of these things and so much more. So today, on the screen here, we have a 4-node cluster. Just to summarize, we have 2 nodes that are dedicated admin and monitor. So ISE01 is our primary admin node and our secondary monitor node. ISE02 is our secondary admin node and primary monitor node. ISE03 and ISE04 are our policy services nodes. I like to have 2 in a node group. And today we're going to actually rebuild ISE04 because it crashed. And I figured it'd be great. We'll just go through the process of rebuilding it, and we'll add the videos to the sites and to YouTube so you guys can get this whole visual effect of everything as well. And then you get to see my pretty face, right? My pretty face. All right, so all of these ISE nodes are on our server subnet in our virtual environment, 172.16.10.0/24. They all have the same default gateway of 10.1, and they're on VLAN ID 1000. So when we go through and build out ISE04, there's some information that we do need to build out ISE04, like the subnet address, the subnet, the IP that we're going to give it, the host name, the domain name, all these things that are in the blog that I created. So if you want to follow along in the blog as you're watching this, feel free to browse to zigbits.tech, and there it is right there, ZBISE01. So ZB is short for Zigbits, and then ISE01. This is the first entry of the blog for this series. And when you go ahead and hit this is going to be a basic ISE VM installation. And that's actually what we're going to go through today. So some of the stuff that we do need to have handy when we do this is our host names, our IP addresses, our subnets, default gateway, whatever password credentials we're going to give the ISE node. And then for our environment, we actually need to have DNS servers up and running. We really should have an Active Directory configured, up and running, domain, forest, whatever you might have. NTP is a big deal. Now in this environment, my NTP server is actually gone, so I will have to be rebuilding an NTP server, which I'll go ahead and add to a video at some point. So when we go through that process, it's going to fail, and I know it's going to fail, so I'm just going to let it go ahead and fail, and then I'll come back to NTP in the future. Now I will say that NTP is very, very critical when you're talking about any NAC solution, any network access control solution. It is very critical to synchronize the time for your logs and your authentications. If anything's skewed, then things won't work. ISE won't properly replicate traffic. It won't sync the traffic. AD won't be in sync. So you want to make sure you're utilizing a time server that is fairly updated, if it's using a GPS unit or if it's just directly updated with like your domain controllers. All right, so the first step in this process for us today, so step number 1, we need to get the OVA. Now, I already have the OVA downloaded, so you're going to have to go to the Cisco site, Cisco download site, log in with your credentials, your CCL credentials, and download the corresponding Cisco ISE OVA. Again, in this specific circumstance, I'm just using one I've already downloaded, and I'm going to launch it from there. And then we're going to deploy that OVA as our second step within our virtual environment. And again, these are the screenshots in the blog, so you can follow along, but we're just going to do it real live here in our lab environment. And then once we have that done, once we have our OVA deployed, we're going to go ahead and initialize the Cisco ISE setup script, or the setup wizard, or whatever you want to call it, within that system. So once it's deployed, we're going to turn it on. We are going to edit some settings on it before we turn it on, and then we're going to jump right in and configure the ISE setup. And then once we configure the ISE setup, it's going to go through its process, it's going to set up, and then we're going to finally verify that the applications are running, that the ISE application's up and running, that we can access it both via SSH and via the GUI, and that's going to kind of wrap up what our goal is for today. And then once the next episode, we'll add it to the cluster, we'll replicate traffic, all that good jazz. All right, so enough of me yapping away. I'm rambling. Let's go ahead and get this thing deployed, right? So again, this diagram is on the site. If you need it, you can reference it. It's there. It's really just our lab environment for today. We have a server network. We have an ISE client network. We have 2 NICs going to an ESXi server, and that's where we can kind of isolate our server networks over here to our client networks. And that way I can actually configure ISE on this physical port for our client networks. And that allows us to ISE all these ports, all these kind of test hosts, if you will, over here in VLAN ID 2000. And then we don't have to enable ISE on the server network. All right, and this is our physical network. Just real quick, the switch is there, the APs are there, the firewall's still here. This router is no longer here. We got rid of that router when we moved to the new house, and that was actually my NTP server, so I will be adding some sort of NTP server in the future, but this router is no longer in the path. So the firewall connects directly into the switch, okay? All right, enough of that background. Let's just do it, huh? So we're gonna go into our virtual environment, and we're just gonna go ahead and log in. And once we go, that was the wrong password. I already know that was the wrong password, so it's going to fail. But once that comes back, I will go ahead and log in with the right password. Make those stupid mistakes, you know, it happens all the time. Too many different passwords to memorize. All right, so this is going to be my virtual environment. I'm just going to go ahead and log into it, and I'm just going to literally go through the process of deploying the OVA here. And as you can see, if I expand this, I'm going to actually make this full screen. So here I have ISO 1, ISO 2, ISO 3. I have my ISE test host here. I have my domain controllers here too, and then I have my wireless controller, right? So those are what I have today. I'm going to File, Deploy OVAF template here. Excuse me. And once this window pops up, it's really going to be simplistic. I'm just going to go through the steps. So I already have this OVA location pre-saved because I've done it before. And if you don't, you're going to have to browse to your location, right? So if wherever you downloaded that OVA file, and you'll see I have a whole bunch of OVA files. So wherever you downloaded your specific OVA file, you want to make sure you can select it. Now in this case, this is an older OVA, and again, we're going to upgrade this eventually. But for now, it's here, and we're just going to go ahead and select it and hit next. This screen gives you a summarization of what that OVA includes. It says what product it is, what version, what vendor, how much space it's going to utilize, that kind of stuff. Hit next. Here's where we're going to give it our name, and we're just going to call it ISO 4. And then we just go ahead and specify a data store, right? And then I have a limited amount of space in my virtual environment here. So I'm just going to go ahead and put it on a space that has the most free, which is this guy right here in the middle one. And then you're going to want to pick your specific data kind of store policy or disk format policy. This is going to be specific to your environment, so talk to your VMware guys, your storage guys. They'll tell you what to use. I'm just going to use this first option, thick provision lazy 0. And then you're going to go ahead and specify your network. Now in this case, I'm just using this server network for this. It's not going to go on my client network or anything else. I'm just going to go throw it on my server network because it's going to be on the server network. And you get a summarization page. This gives you all the information that we just selected. Is everything good to go? You could also go ahead and power on after deployment. I'm not, because I want to edit some settings. All right, so we're gonna hit finish. And this is gonna take a minute or two to go through this process. So as it goes through this process, it's literally deploying the template into your virtual environment. It takes a little bit depending on how fast or slow your virtual environment is. And we're just gonna let it go, and then we will be right back. Well, I'm back here, friends. This is about to wrap up. So got right back here. We're gonna go through the rest here live. Got a few seconds left, and this is going to deploy into our virtual environment. And then what we're going to do is edit some settings and turn her on. That is our current task for this moment. All right, so we got 8 seconds, it says. Though you can't count down. I was going to try to do a countdown. It doesn't work. All right, well, there we go. So now we're going to go ISO 4. Now, what I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to edit the resource reservations on this VM, because in my virtual environment, I just don't have enough resources to use the resource reservations. And I'm going to actually change some of the resources as well. I'm going to bring them down a little bit. I'm going to actually mimic what I have on ISO 3. So I just want to level set, right? So my environment is a lab environment. It is at home. It's in a closet. It's one ESXi server. It is not in production, right? So these reservations, these virtual reservations, they're resource reservations, and they are on the template for a reason. So in production environments, do not remove these resource reservations, and make sure if you don't control your virtual environment and you have like a VM team, or some sort of virtualization team, make sure you have that conversation with them too, because sometimes in deployments I've done in the past, they go ahead and remove the resource reservations without telling you. Now, ISE needs to have dedicated resources. It's one of those applications that needs to have dedicated resources. And if you don't have it, it can act very weird at times, depending on the situation. So just throwing that out there, make sure you leave the reservations on in your production environments. But again, in my environment here, we're going to go ahead and remove the resource reservations. So for our CPU, we're just going to go ahead and so again, just to show you where I went, right? Because I right clicked on the ISE04 VM. I went to edit settings. And then in here on my properties or my settings, I selected the memory and I went to the resources tab. And I still have actually I didn't select memory, I just went to the resources tab. But here I select CPU under resources, and I'm actually going to just find this reservation item. I'm just going to bring it all the way down. And then I'm going to click memory and do the same exact thing. I'm going to bring this reservation all the way down. And then the other thing I'm going to do is go back to the hardware tab, and I'm actually going to change my memory for my VM, for this VM, to 8 gigs versus 16. I'm going to hit OK, and that's going to go and make those changes. And I'm just going to double check that what I did was the same I did on here. I like to have my policy services nodes the same settings across the board. It looks like I did. So 8 gigs, 4 CPUs, that's perfect. So the settings should have already taken place. Let's just double check. So we go back and right click and go to edit settings. And here they are. We got 8 gigs of memory, we got 4 CPUs, and those reservations are off, which is what we want. Perfect. So we're just going to go ahead and start it now. Hit power, right click and power on. And it's going to go ahead and do its thing. We're going to go ahead and open the console here so that we can see what's happening. And then we can go ahead and hit that setup wizard. And I threw a hat on. You like my hat? I love my hat. I wear it all the time. It's a good hat. All right, so once it comes up, this is a similar screen that you should see. This is the initial boot login screen. So if it hasn't been configured yet, if your ISE node hasn't been configured yet, this is what you should see. And all you should have to do is type in setup, just like it says on the screen, and it's going to go through the setup wizard. So if you can see in the bottom here, it's kind of hard to, to visualize here, but at the bottom we have enter host name. It's going to ask you a bunch of questions. So here our host name is ISO4. Our IP address is 172.16.10.204. So this is all that information I said at the beginning that you're going to need. If you don't have it right now, you have to go find it. So this is a /24 network. Our default gateway is 172.16.10.1. Our DNS domain is ziga.lab because I haven't changed it yet, so it's still ziga.lab. My last name .lab. I want to change it to zigbits.lab. I just haven't done it yet. Primary name server. I always do my secondary domain controller first, and then I always do add secondary name server. Yes, my primary second domain controller. And then if you want to add a third, you can. Sometimes people add like, Google or whatever. I'm not. NTP server, I know this isn't going to work, right? I'm just going to go ahead and throw in what I want it to be when it's all said and done, but it's not going to work. It's going to fail. Remember, I told you at the beginning. And then I'm going to go ahead and add another one, and I'm actually add time.nist.gov. Nope, that's it. And then our time zone is going to be America /New York, if I did that right, _New York. And this is just from doing it a couple times. I forget which way the slash goes. We'll see if that, yeah, I had a feeling. I failed at that. All right, so we're going to just do it again, and it's the other way, /America /New York. There we go. And I do like to enable SSH. So when you're going through this process, depending on your security controls or your posture level, compliance, whatever requirements you have to follow, you might want to enable SSH. You might not be able to. I like to enable SSH. So now it's going to ask me my username, what I want my username to be. This is the default username, and it's going to be an admin account, no matter if it's not named admin. I use the default admin account, and then I give it a password. And then you're going to enter the password again. All simple stuff, common stuff. And now it's going to start the process. Now it's going to go through some checks. I need to stay vocal or visual on this for a minute because I know the NTP is going to fail. And when the NTP fails, it's going to give me a warning. It's going to make me hit a button or hit an option. So it's going to actually stop the process until I actually provide an input to the process. Now, while this is happening, what I like to do is I like to open a command line and make sure I can ping my server that's coming up. Now it's going to do its process and say, hey, can it ping or not? I also like to make sure I have a command line and I can try to ping it. Now remember that IP we gave it was 10.204 and we can ping it. Now I'm pinging it from my computer outside of this device. And that just gives me a quick validation that I'm able to ping it and it's good to go. Now it is going to go through the process of rebooting and all this stuff. So I usually keep a ping open on this guy for a little bit. And like I said, I'm just going to wait for this NTP to fail, and then I'm going to go ahead and let it go through once I give it a prompt. And then this process is going to take a while. This is going to be a time to, go get some coffee, go have a conversation with someone, go work and do something else. As long as you know this stuff's going to work, you're going to ping it. NTP works. You're not going to have any situations where your storage fails. There's certain requirements around the I/O on your storage side. Now I have, again, this lab environment that's pieced together and I don't have the storage issues all the time. So VM bandwidth writing to the disk must be at least 50 megs. Of course I said that and I get that warning. Interesting. I don't think I've gotten that warning in this environment before. Continuing installation, however, this VM should not be used for production use under disk performance is addressed. All right, so it looks like something's going on with this disk. I don't think it's ever that low. So if you do get this warning, just be mindful that if you're in production, you don't want to do this. Your performance is going to be hindered because of your disk performance. I'm not sure why my disk writing is so low. It's usually higher than that. So there could be something wrong with that disk. Maybe that's why this VM failed originally. But here's the sync with NTP server failed, right? I already knew that was going to happen. So we're just going to go ahead and hit no to retry because I know it's going to keep failing, and then I'll fix it later. But at this point, this is going to take a while. It's going through the installation. It's going to install ISE. It's going to reboot a couple times. So come back in 30, 45 minutes, and then it'll be up and running. So we'll come back in a little bit and see where we're at. Until then, see you in a little bit. Hey friends, well, we're back, okay? We took that little break. We went and got some coffee. Let's look. We've actually drank a good portion of our coffee this morning. There we go. Got some coffee, and now we're ready to get back in the lab and see how the setup wizard has completed, and now we can go ahead and log into our ISE04 node. So just to level set again, let me pull up my handy dandy notes here. This is odd because I had them a minute ago. Where did they go? Ah, there they are. Haha. All right. So we've gone through a number of steps already. We have our setup wizard already done. We're pinging our new ICE node, ISE04. So let's go ahead and on our console window in VMware, we're going to go ahead and log back into it with that new password we created. If only I can remember what I did. All right. So the first thing we want to do, we just want to validate that the application is running after the installation, right? So we log in, I logged in correctly. And this is going to be a command that we're going to use throughout all of our ICE deployments that we do together. This is going to be one of the biggest commands. Now, one second, let me just move this recorder here so it's out of the way. There we go. So if I do show application status ICE, this is going to show me what's going on within this node. And I want to make sure that the application server is running for ICE. Now this command does take a minute to come back, so be patient. It's not a very quick command always. It does take some time to come back. All right, so this is what you're gonna get when you do that command. And what we really actually care about here is, I can't highlight because I'm in the console window, but we really care about the application server and make sure it's running. And it is like we want. So now what we're gonna do is we're gonna test, we're going to try to SSH into our node, and we're going to try to go to the GUI side and make sure it's good to go. So let's just try to SSH first. Now I'm using PuTTY, so feel free to use whatever application you do want to use. And sorry about my phone, I didn't turn off the volume on it. I'm going to do that right now. Look at that production. There we go. And you're going to get this potentially this security alert depending on how you have things set up. So I've never SSH'd to this node before. So I'm gonna get this warning the first time I do it. I'm gonna go ahead and hit yes. This is just the SSH RSA2 key that this node comes with. It's a self-signed key that it has. I'm gonna go ahead and hit yes. And I get my admin prompt here. I'm gonna go ahead and log into it. And I was able to log in perfectly fine like I wanted. So now I can validate here that SSH works. This isn't the console. Remember, I'm not logged into the console this way. The console is limited. So you want to make sure that you can SSH to it if you're allowed to enable SSH. So I can do the same command here, and this time what I can do is show you what I was trying to show in the VMware console window, but I just couldn't. Let that come back. I'm going to close this VMware console window. We don't need it anymore. So once this comes back, I can actually highlight what I was trying to show just to re-articulate. So this is the command that you're going to get. This is the output from that command. What I really care about is making sure my application server is running, which it is. And I can highlight it like that. All right, so that's good. Now one last test is to test our web access to our new node. So here, you can access it via the IP address. Now I already have a DNS entry in for this node. Now, when you go to access it via the IP address and you've never done it before, you're going to have to supply HTTPS beforehand. And you might also get a certificate warning, right? Because we haven't installed any certificates yet. This is all self-signed certificates. We hit advanced, we hit proceed. And I literally just want to make sure I can log in to the front end of this node prior to doing anything else. So it's still the same admin account. Now, I want to touch base on this real quick. The default admin account that you create in the command line in that setup wizard, there's two different accounts that are created. First, it's a command line account that's an admin account, but then that same account is duplicated within the application on the front end, on the website, on this GUI side. So while they will be the same username and password initially, they do have different settings. So you can actually reset one and not the other. You can change the passwords if you want them to be different. And they will time out with the default policy within ICE. So I believe it's 45 days. So 45 days, the passwords will get reset. And when you go to log in, you'll have to actually change the password. I disable it usually in my lab environments. All right, so let's go ahead and log in and just finish this up. If I type the right password, that is. So this is just giving me the default or the basic home page within the ISE GUI. And I literally am just making sure this is good to go and I can access it. So you're going to get some splash pages that do come up. I always just hit next here. We don't have any licenses. We have the base license or the evaluation license installed currently, which is fine. But this is our ISE node. So it is online. We're able to access it. It's not in a cluster yet or anything like that. It is just online in standalone mode. And that's fine for now. In the next episode, we'll go ahead and add it to our cluster. We'll do all the certification provisions. We'll go through that process and I'll put it on video in the next episode. So this was ZBISE01. The next episode will be ZBISE02. Until next time, thanks for watching. Have a great day. Bye.